Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending of where in the world you're watching. Welcome to the A4Q World Congress second edition. Today we have Jennifer Smith. I'm not going to take too much of her time. She has a very exciting topic awaiting for us. I just want to very quickly do an introduction for Jennifer today. So her topic today is going to be built for action, not distraction. Jennifer Smith, for those that don't know her, has worked in the field of user experience for more than 15 years, and she's a lead UX designer and design solutions for mobile, desktop, and IoT devices, and is a co-founder of AGI, American Graphics Institute. Jennifer, I'm going to pass it on over to you and put your slides up in just a moment.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just jump in. I am doing a session on build for action, not distraction. This might be a lot of information for you, so just hang in there. I want to cover at a high level view everything that's really important to building a distraction-free environment or system for your users. So again, my background is as a UX designer, which is not only visual design, it is information design, and I'll take you through explaining that. But it's really important that you kind of take a step back from what you're doing and you keep things really simple. You don't over design. You really think about what your users are looking for and you present it to them easily. So just so you have a little background, I am vice president. I was co-founder of American Graphics Institute. I worked with Microsoft for 3 years as artist in residence, working with new panoramic layout of designs. I actually am also the lead designer for a global English as a second language organization where I make apps for mobile, websites, e-commerce, all sorts of things. And then also I design apps for some insurance companies. So a lot of things that I'm doing in addition to consulting. And also I write books. So I've written over 21 books on creative tools. The Dummies is probably the most popular one. So I know how to use the software, which isn't everything, of course, in UX. The tools are not everything. Of course, knowing about the high level organization behind your product is much more important than making it look beautiful. So simple can be harder than complex, which is absolutely true. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean and make it simple. And this is just a comment by Steve Jobs, but it's absolutely true. You're going to see how I'm going to mention throughout this presentation iteration and really trying to work at getting simple. A lot of times as we're building things, they're a lot more complex when they begin, and then we kind of vet things out that we don't need in order to create a better product. So information hierarchy creates visual hierarchy, and I just want to explain this, the order in which you create things and the order in which your users see things. And so information hierarchy means that you take validated and prioritized information and you reflect it in the structure of your application or website. The things, obviously, that are most important to the user appear up first, and then you trickle down from there. And it sounds really simple, but it's not always simple to get there. There's also the visual hierarchy that takes your findings and you map prioritized information to visual design without adding distractions, such as unnecessary content and decorations. This is something that typically somebody who has been forced into user experience design, but maybe doesn't have the visual design background, might do. It's essentially over designing things, maybe putting in a couple extra gradients or borders or playing around with the type in a really strange way. So Dieter Rams, I'm sure those of you from Germany recognize him, great designer, design for Braun. But he had a great quote: "We live today with a lot of chaos, and designers should concentrate on helping to lighten the chaos, including the noise." And the noise basically is the distractions. Anything that takes you away from looking at what's important. So distractions in your content come from not understanding your user needs and goals, which leads to poor information hierarchy, leads to too many choices, and leads to a redundant and confusing design. Using practical techniques, you can vastly improve your user experiences. Some of these are really simple, but amazingly enough, a lot of people still don't talk to their users. User experience is all about users. And so if you don't have a connection with your users, then you're not really doing UX design. What you're doing is UI design, user interface design. So you talk to your users, you discover their needs and their priorities, and you reflect that in your design. So this is just a product that we were working on, but taking something and building something for a tablet that was bigger and chunkier and got rid of the colors and a lot of the content that wasn't necessary. So visual distractions come from redundancy in design, repeating things over and over again, using too many type styles and sizes, and I'll explain that, adding too many unnecessary decorations. And again, we'll talk about specifics on this later. Using borders and lines to separate content instead of space and positioning. So all these borders here are actually distracting the user. Not understanding how to use effective color effectively. You really shouldn't be using every color in the palette in one app. Now, I like to show an example. This is the Baltimore Washington International Airport website, the old one. And of course, I'm in the Boston, USA area, so this is a good example for me, but I think it'll make sense to all of you. They kind of just address everything on this page. I don't know how many people go to an airport website and just look at every single plane that's landing or arriving, taking off, but they've got that list here right up, in front. And maybe I could be wrong, but I don't think that's their prime user. They also have parking and information about getting there and travel tips, and then they've got all these other buttons up here. So they went back and they talked to their users, and what they did was they found what people really wanted to do when they went to the website. And so you'll see that it's now changed to almost look like scenarios. I'm planning a trip. I'm flying from BWI. I'm arriving at BWI. I'm picking someone up. And as you click on these tabs, you're finding relevant information that is specifically and only about those things. They take away the distractions. They don't put everything on there. If you're going in and you're trying to find parking, it's all about parking. And in fact, they made it even more intelligent by making it responsive. And so when you reduce that website down to the size of being on your phone, they tuck all the things under the menu up there in the upper right-hand corner that they found people who were accessing the website on a phone didn't really need immediately. What the people who were looking on the website for when they were driving or parking, whatever, was flight status and parking availability. So they kind of just really narrowed down the focus of this to be more direct and exactly what was needed for a mobile user. So I'm going to go through the whole high level process of creating a mobile app for a food truck. And obviously, I can't go into detail about everything because I've got 45 minutes here. But I do want to give you a high level overview. There is a lot more to this. And I tried really hard to not go down in the weeds and keep it at a high level. But if you do have questions about this later, feel free to reach out to me because obviously I can't tell you everything at this point, but I am going to give you some really good tips to start. So avoid creating distractions right away by not looking at a current system. So let's say that somebody comes to me within my company and they're like, hey, we need to redo this website. And if I look at what that website is doing, or if I look at wireframes too soon, sometimes what happens is I get caught up in what exists before recognizing what the real user needs are. And it forces me to question, they've got that there. Do I need to put that there? Sometimes it's best to do a high level overview, maybe a mind map or something to collect the information before you take a look at that. So avoid creating distractions by not wireframing right away. These are some examples of wireframes that people have given me. They're like, yeah, this is what we want it to look like. you don't know what you want it to look like this early on. You still need to figure that out. And this is just going to force me to look at this and say, do we really need those stars in the lower left-hand corner? What are they for? It's just extra work. And of course, any interactive app that requires, you know, lots of long text to explain is probably, questionable anyway. So avoid distractions by mapping results from research. Understand what the user is looking for. I try to make this clear. There's no excuse to not doing research. It doesn't have to be complicated. If you look on NN Group, Nielsen Norman Group, they even state that you can do research. And if you look at this chart, if you talk to 6 people, it starts to kind of balance out here where you're not going to find much more information between, like definitely after 9, but 12. It's not market research where you have to talk to 100 people. If you can at least talk to 5, 6, 12, heck, even 3, something is better than nothing. But what you should be doing is using qualitative and quantitative research methods. So qualitative would be just like talking to people, interviews. Quantitative is anything that gives you a value that can be counted. So that might be a survey. 50% of users want to see parking options. Interview 5 to 6 potential users. Survey as many as you can, but understand that the results generally change little after about 10 responses. So if I'm looking at this and I say, how do you choose a food truck in my survey? And I have 11 responses. If I get 20 responses, it doesn't really change. It kind of keeps that same proportion. You don't have to recruit a crowd. 5 participants will discover over 80% of the challenges. And this is just a statement from the Journal of Usability. I'm going to give you some simple methods you can use to help you understand what users are looking for. The minimal resources, just research existing data. Do surveys. Surveys are extremely easy to create, and they provide you with a huge amount of information. If you have more resources, do some observation and contextual interviews. There are tons of free data repositories out there. Some of these are US, like government data, but I can go on here and find, how many people purchased hybrids last year, the average cost of gas or whatever. But then there's also research reports that you can get from Google Scholar and some science frameworks that give you access to a ton of information. And you might use that to find out things like, here, I'll just see if I have an example here, something like this, where I went on just for fun and discovered that millennials have been great supporters of food trucks, according to an article by Statista. The National Restaurant Association reported that consumers ages 18 to 34 were the most likely to purchase a meal from a food truck, followed by 35 to 44 years old. So it gives me kind of a starting point here where I know my audience. I'm starting to pick up just general information that's going to help me to build my app. I talked about creating and running surveys, helps to discover various users and user groups. All of a sudden, you'll discover that there are different types of people who maybe want to use the food truck app. Provides inexpensive but valuable quantitative data. You can't argue with the data. It makes it easy to build and design choices. So here are a list of different survey companies that you can go through. All of them are free if you are just sending out to your audience. So if you just want to email out a link to a survey, you can do that. If you want SurveyMonkey to find middle-aged women who are working in computer programming, something really specific, then you pay $1 for each one of those, and only if they respond. So it's still relatively inexpensive. So this is what we discovered about our food truck users. 99% of them wanted to look for a food truck on their phone. 50% of them would eat lunch out 1 to 2 times a week. 65% of users don't want to walk more than 10 minutes. We use miles over here, half mile. 75% of users have an hour for lunch, but 12.5% work through lunch. So this helps me to design an app where I'm starting to recognize that they need to find something quickly and easily. So we did our survey, then we interview users. We create a script of open-ended questions, where they can't answer no or yes, and start a conversation with our users. We don't ask them what they want. We don't want to talk to them about an existing system because the existing system might not have what they want. You find their goals and discover their challenges. You observe what they're doing. You let them continue the conversation. And just to give you an example of something like this that kind of pulls it together, we work with the Veterans Administration over here in the US, and they needed an app created so that when people called in with medical questions, that they could easily find answers. And their existing system forced them to log in their name. When somebody called, they had to take the information. They had to type it all in. It took a few minutes. And with some simple questions, like for instance, do you have um, do you have this information on file? Do you have it related to a phone number? If somebody calls in, can we autofill all the information without the actual operator having to put that in themselves? And they're like, of course. So sometimes it's just like really simple things that you think about that don't exist in the existing system, but that you can make changes in to increase the usage and make it a lot easier and more pleasant for people to use. So what we discovered about our users, the ones that we interviewed, was that most users have a limited time. No kidding, we knew that. Most users want to find places that other people recommend. Most users want to be able to review menus. Many are loyal to a specific food truck and want to know where it is. So this is a mind map. If you guys haven't tried these, they are so much fun. They're more fun if you do them in a room and you got a whiteboard. But once we've talked to people and we've discovered information about our product, we'll put that product in the middle. You can see food trucks. And so what has happened is that we've created a bunch of noise in our head. We've created a whole bunch of information, but we don't really know what to do with it at this point. But if I think about the food truck, and then I pull an arrow out and I'm like, okay, people really wanted to read the menu. Menu, what do they want to see on the menu? Types of food. They also, what types of food? Mediterranean, Mexican, Chinese, tapas. Like, what else do they want to do? They want to find the location. What else can we do to help them find the location? The zip code, how far it is from them. Make sure it's under a mile. It's just all your thoughts are put down in a non-linear way so that when you go back to build your app, you're like, what did we think about with types of foods? It helps you to create filters, sorts, helps you create the organization of your app. It takes about 10 to 20 minutes to do this. This particular one, I used Lucidchart to create because it allows me to work with others collaboratively online. But like I said, you can do this on a piece of paper with a pencil or on a whiteboard as well. So focus is the key to creating a really distraction-free app. And so by trying to figure out what it's going to be great at, like what are you really going to try to make it good at? It's going to help you to pull up all the features that are most important up to the top and keep the other features. Everything can be there, but maybe they're not in front of everyone at all times. So after we do our mind map and we've had a chance to kind of collect our thoughts on everything that we've thought about, we create a best at statement, basically saying my food truck app is best in its category at locating my top rated food trucks and informing me when they are nearby, as well as allowing me to share comments and ratings about the food trucks with my friends. So it kind of collects everything in what we call a run-on sentence. But if we post this up on the wall and we try to remember it, it's going to keep us focused on the most important things, the top rated food trucks, having something nearby. So if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, we should put a weather widget in here so they know what the weather's like. It's like, I don't, that's not part of what we're trying to do. I mean, lots of people have weather apps. That's not us. We don't need to incorporate that. So we also avoid creating distractions by recognizing user groups. So as you're going through this, you might recognize that there are different types of people who might use your app. And so you might create different experiences for them. So, for instance, there might be the food truck owner who wants to log in and change hours and let people know where they are. And then there's the food truck seeker who is just trying to find Mexican food that's within a half mile from them. So, you might actually have two different sets of applications that you're creating, one for the food truck owner and one for the food truck seeker. And if that's the case, you'd have to go through this process doing the research and mind map and figuring out what these different user groups need for each group. So user needs, those needs that come up that you recognize, turn into user requirements. And user requirements turn into features. And basically, a feature is anything that's on your screen. So a picture, a button, a rating star, all of that is features. So features are what you see on the screen. So at this point, we figure out from our research, we kind of align what we call scenarios and put in order what we discovered that people needed to do most. And in this case, the users wanted to find a quick bite to eat within a mile or less. So that was the top thing that most people said. Users wanted to be able to locate the type of food or cuisine that they were craving. So that was the second thing. Users want to find a highly rated food truck. They want to see wait time. They want to be able to pre-order and pay. So this might go on. You might have, 10 to 15 different things here. I'm making it simple by just listing 5. So at this point, we brainstorm features that align to those user needs. And this is where the alignment comes in. We know that a user wants to be able to find a truck within 1 mile or less. What do we need to put in our app in order to allow them to do that? Well, we need a map. We probably need to sort by distance. Users want to locate a certain type of food. Well, let's put a keyword search in, filter by cuisine, read menus. User wants to find a highly rated food truck. We'll put a rating system in and reviews. User must be able to see wait time. We'll put an indicator there. And then, of course, payment. The point being, we're not just throwing features on the screen. We're looking at the top scenarios. We're looking at the top things that people want to do. And we're saying, because we know that somebody wants to do this, what can we provide to them? We're not designing it. We're not putting it on the screen. This is way too soon for that. We're just recognizing features that are needed. Then we'll put each feature on a Post-it. You can also use Lucidchart for this as well if you're trying to collaborate with people. But you put everything on a Post-it, and then you build your rough information architecture from this. You're like, okay, most important thing is that they find something that is within a mile. So I'm going to make the map first, and I'm going to put search there, and I'm going to show the closest trucks. You can create the Post-its as you go. You can add them, you can delete them, you can crunch them up if you think they're not important. But we're building our information architecture on the features. And so this is the home page. All the features that are going to be on the home page are clumped together. And then when they click on search, they might end up on a search result page, and that's what's on that page. And then they go to truck information. You're basically building an entire sitemap, but with Post-its, because it gives you the opportunity to go back, take your finger and say, all right, somebody needs to find a food truck within a mile. They go here. And so if you are going through your list of scenarios and you have to go to 4 screens in order to do something that's really important, that means you need to move these Post-its around and reorganize it. But you do this because you can iterate in this way, and it makes it a lot easier to go back and make revisions, obviously than if you already created the application in Photoshop, XD, Sketch, whatever you're using. So you also avoid distractions by sketching and prototyping your design. So once you've figured out what's going to be on each page, it makes it really easy to go and sketch, because you already know that the main page is going to have a map on it and it's going to have little icons of trucks or whatever. You've already figured that out. So now you're sketching, and typically we will sketch a minimum of 5 sketches for each screen. And even more if we need to. But just keep in mind that your first idea for your layout is usually really bad, and you just have to get it out of the way. And then just iterate until you find something that works. Be willing to throw it away. Do not start working in Photoshop or Illustrator or XD, Sketch, Figma, whatever you're using. Those are rigid, predetermined tools. You want to make sure that you're doing something that can be thrown out, done in a few minutes. We test from the beginning and often. We test from our sketches, our paper prototypes. We use balsamic wireframes. But this is the most important part because this is where the fierce reduction of unnecessary items is happening the most. We're looking at things and we're like, we don't really need that, do we? Or we could consolidate this into a different type of icon or whatever it is. But this is when that fierce reduction starts to occur. So that's your information architecture. We figured out what needs to go on the screen. We're really good. We kept it clean. We don't have a lot of things that aren't relevant to the user popping up. But now let's talk about visual design. So showing restraint in visual design, understanding the power of typography, avoiding redundancy in design, not adding extra decorations, don't use borders and lines, and understand how to use color effectively. So I'll just go through this quickly, but we always use a type ramp, and it's not complicated. If you've ever written a report or a paper, you've used a type ramp because you've had your heading 1 and then some content in heading 2 and some content, maybe heading 3. It's the same thing, obviously, except in CSS, you're using H1, H2, H3. But we really limit our text sizes because people look for those differences in type size to help them to understand what's more important. We also do something that comes from Swiss or international typographic styles, which is we will double the size of the next style. So in other words, our H3, if it's like 15, let's say 16 pixels, then our H4 might be 32 pixels, or at least visually double, depending upon the ramp that you're using. And then our H1 might be 40 pixels, but we don't do the subtle change where it's just like barely noticeable. We try to exaggerate that, and that helps to make it easy for people to find what they should be looking at immediately. So just breaking it down like this: body, tertiary information, subhead, headline. And you'll see different organizations use this well, like Knoll, for instance. And I like to point this out because they use the same type size and style in multiple places. They use it based on the level of importance. They're not saying, oh, we're talking about quantity now, so we need to make this bold, or we're talking about the fabric, so we should italicize that. Every time you introduce a new type style, you introduce more noise and confusion to the user. So you want to make sure that you really limit this, and we try to limit our type sizes and styles to between 5 and 7, which means that if I use this Barcelona chair headline at that size and use it someplace else in the website, but I italicize it, that's a totally different style. It doesn't count. You can't multiply use that style. So this is something that has no styles whatsoever, no type ramp in it. And obviously it's kind of gray and washed out. But then you look at this next one and it's really noisy. And this is a really good visual to explain noise because your eyes are being pulled all over the place because somebody decided that something was important enough to go in red, but something else was important, so they were just going to do it in italics and bold. So a lot of noise. Whereas if it's organized, it looks a lot better if you say, all right, this is really important, and here's the content, and this is also important, and here's the content. It might require somebody to go back to your copy editors or you to change some of the copy to make it work. If you don't go into some product like Google Docs or Word and make sure that whatever you're creating for an application or a website, you make sure it has a hierarchy of some sort, or else what's going to happen is when you go to design it, you're not going to know what to do with the content. It's just going to be all over the place. So have even that structure done ahead of time. So also use a typographic grid, and that organizes information within a space. As visual people, we look at things and we like to see them on a grid. And just as background information, I'm actually in Masters of Science program for human factors, and I'm learning a lot about vision and such and what we look for. And we really don't like things when they're off alignment. That also creates noise. Some people think that designers might, be a little obsessed with precision, but there's a reason for it, because if you just slop things down, it does produce noise and it makes it really hard for people to interpret information. So, like for instance, you look at Adobe site, like everything's lined across. Here, it's not. And so when you look at this, it creates a little noise and you're like, is that less important because it's down? Or maybe you don't even notice it, but it just bothers you. So, like with this, we've got, one of the pictures is off, the spacing's off. It produces noise. And then as soon as it's fixed, you're like, okay, that feels better. You don't know why, maybe, but it's just easier to look at. You also want to avoid unnecessary decorations. So think about things before you create it. Do you really need this box, or can you just space things differently so that this looks separate? Do you really need a drop shadow? Sometimes, yes. If you know anything about Google material design, they put a little drop shadow behind things to indicate that the item has affordance, which means that it is clickable. Because they found that sometimes if you do flat designs that are too flat, that people think they're just pictures and that they don't have any interactive capability. Do you need to put it in 3D? A lot of people put gradients on things. Is that actually helping to convey more information, or is it just adding noise? Simplicity may be the single most important usability guideline. And so just look at stuff that, if it's repeating over and over again, maybe you hide it until they cross over it, or, maybe you just don't need all that information. Users recognize patterns and use recognized patterns and icons wisely. We do recognize patterns and icons quickly, but maybe we can even do things, instead of having lots of icons on, maybe using something that's a toggle so it doesn't take up as much space. If you don't fret if you have to label your icons, just going back to this, I find that sometimes we simplify things so much that people can't find controls and we have to go back and label them, which is actually the right thing to do. Reconsider the use of skeuomorphic designs. That's when you take something and you try to make it look like what it really looks like in life, but it can really clutter things up. So, making tabs look like tabs, or making folders look like folders, or even a phone looking like a phone, because who has a phone that looks like the existing phone icon, right? Everyone has a smartphone at this point. So these are skeuomorphic. There's just a lot of information that's not necessary. You're doing things digitally. There are better ways to present information than, making it look like something that exists. And this looks bad, probably looks bad in real life as well. Blend simplicity in design with affordance. That's what I was talking about. If you don't know anything about material design, you might want to Google material design, but lots of good suggestions in there as to how to use a lot of the elements that I'm talking about right now. So don't fill in empty spaces. A lot of people feel like everything on the screen has to be filled in. But if you leave some of it empty, you can actually lead the viewer into important information. Allow them to focus on what's important. We'll talk about two really quick ways that you can do this. One is the rule of thirds, which if you're a photographer, you may already know about, but you can put compositional elements into the spaces that are either 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, or on intersections, or a combination of the both. So if you look at this picture, you see that the image on the left isn't following any rule, but the image on the right, the rock formation has been put on the third, the land ends at a third, and the sky is 2/3. And so you can even try this on your phone. This is my puppy, but you can set up in your settings of either Android or Apple phones, go into your settings for your camera and turn on that grid, and then you'll see that grid. It's really good practice for building beautifully proportioned compositions. So explaining this, you see a lot of different websites using rule of thirds, but even if I remove that one watch, you'll see that if I put this on an intersection, I have a really good use of white space there, and it's actually pulling people in. The other method that we use is the golden mean, which if I could make you answer, I would, ask you what the next number is. But basically, the next number is 34 because it's 0 and 1 equals 1 and 1 and 2, 3, 3 and 5, and so on. It's a proportion that was recognized by Fibonacci back in 1225. And it actually comes out to be 1.618. So just remember that 1.618. There's a lot more to this, but if you look at the coil, and you might recognize that, this is the Fibonacci coil. And basically, it just starts with a square that's multiplied times 1.618 to come up with the perfect rectangle. And then squares are put into that as it breaks down. So like, for instance, this is just a recording, a little video coming out of Illustrator where I made the perfect square. And then you can see that in Illustrator, I can put the asterisks at the end and say times this point times 1.618. And that creates the perfect golden rectangle. And sometimes I use that just for putting images in that size or, content. But you'll also see that once I've done that, I can just draw squares into those other sections to break it down. And then if I were to take that pen tool and build the coil, I don't think I do a great job with this, but you get it. You can see that all it is breaking it down. And so we might break things down into these sections. They don't have to be exact, but it's just a nice proportion to understand. So you see it used again to pull information in. They don't fill everything in. They leave some space there, which helps people to find the content that they need. If you cluttered everything up, then there would be too much in there and it would confuse them. I use a program called Matrix that's really fun to use that just puts this overlay on top of my apps as I'm working so that I can see that coil. But again, you see it used in a lot of cases, even in architecture and photography as well. So understanding color. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to move on with this. Choose a color harmony. So find the color wheel. I'll talk about that in a moment, but choose colors that go well together. Avoid excess use of color. Use the 60-30-10 rule, explain that, and be careful with background images. So if you choose a color harmony, you can go in. This is a program, Adobe Color. I'll just click on this and see if it actually takes me there or if I have any issues. But you'll see that I can say, oh, I want to use monochromatic or triad. And then you could enter the colors in that you want to use. So if you have a corporate color that you want to use, but it gives you the opportunity to find colors that work well with your product. Maybe I like this monochromatic, but now I've got the opportunity to choose all these colors. It's showing me colors that go well together. And then if you're Adobe users, you can actually save this and it goes to your library so that you can pull these colors up no matter what you're using. There are other options for folks. There's lots of color wheel products out there or websites where you aren't required to use the Adobe products to get to it. So let me go ahead back to this. Oh, shoot. Sorry about that. Let me close.
Hello there, everyone. I believe Jennifer is just coming right over. She just closed her tab, so let's just wait for her a couple of seconds until she joins us again. Thank you, everyone watching. My name is Andrea. For anyone who joined a little bit further in the conference, just to let you know, we also have the Oktoberfest social event this afternoon, well, this evening in a couple of hours' time. So I'm going to be actually putting in the comment section also. There you will be able to also find that here. And here you will be able to visit us in the Gather Town area, where Jennifer is also going to be there for a little bit in case any of you have any questions for her. Also, this event is live, as you can probably see all. So if you have any questions for Jennifer that she's going to join us in a couple of seconds, you can leave them in the comments section wherever you're watching, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and we will answer any of your questions if we have some available time at the end of the presentation. So more than welcome to add all of your questions there, and Jennifer is going to be more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, you can also meet her at the Oktoberfest social event. We have already put this also And here you will be able to see. So that will be at 7 p.m. UTC plus 2 hours times that we're going to be going live on that social event. There's going to be loads of surprises. So I hope it's going to be, I'm going to see loads of everyone there. You will be able to speak with different people and some of our speakers today as well. Let's see if we give a little bit more time for Jennifer to join back with us. So I think when she was just closing some of the tabs, it also closed the session in the process. So let's just give her a little bit. In the meantime, I would like to show you the Oktoberfest video so you can all see it as well.
This 27th of October, we wait for you to celebrate Oktoberfest in our gather town. For sure, it will be a very entertaining event with live music, with A4Q staff, and of course, all of you. Don't miss our A4Q Oktoberfest. It will be very fun. Prost!
So that was one of our colleagues that was mentioning a little bit about the Oktoberfest. So we look forward to seeing everyone there this evening, wherever you are, or might be afternoon, depending of where you're watching us from. Let's just give a little bit more time for Jennifer to join us. It might be that she's just trying to log in with us back again. I actually already had some questions for her from some of the groups on Facebook that I could see as well. Let's have a look. I can see her over here. Oh, let's wait a little bit. Let's take a look. So in the meantime, also, if anyone has any questions, so let us know where you're watching from. That will be quite interesting to also see. In the comment section, I will be able to also see where you're also, all of us watching us from in the Congress. And hopefully this will also allow a couple of more seconds until Jennifer can join us, hopefully soon, since we do have another session coming up straight after this one as well. I hope everyone is enjoying the F4Q World Congress second edition. So far, we've started today in the morning with already loads of sessions in different languages available for you. And of course, we're also going to be live here available tomorrow. So I hope we can see all of you as well there, where we have even more speakers talking about different topics, all available there. So let me just take a look over here to see if Jennifer has joined us already. So I can see she might be still trying to connect with us. Is Oktoberfest. I have a question over here from Alfin. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. It says, is Oktoberfest conduct offline? No, it's not offline. Actually, it's just on hold. That is the waiting area until the Oktoberfest is open, which is in like about 2 hours and a couple minutes time is where it's going to go live. So that area where you can access in the link, I put it in the comment section, you can go there, and it's the waiting area in the meantime. But in a couple of hours times at 7 p.m. Here's Jennifer with us. Let me just put her in the screen. Hi, Jennifer.
Did you get the conversation? Was it broadcasted? I couldn't. Or did
Yes,
we?
yes, yes. We're
Okay,
still
because all of a
live,
sudden everything was
actually.
gone, and I was like, "Ah." So
We're
good.
still live. We're still live. If you wouldn't mind, share your screen
Yep.
so I can put your presentation up. And I was telling some of the people about the Oktoberfest as well, and that it's going to be open in a couple of hours' time. I hope that answered your question, Alfin. I'm gonna just wait to put the presentation of
Yep. Yep.
Jennifer.
Yep. Okay.
Great. Glad to answer your question, Alvin. So I look forward to seeing you there in a couple of hours' times. I believe Jennifer is also going to join us there for a little bit. There you can see, I can see your screen, Jennifer, if you would mind just putting
Yep.
your
Yep.
presentation up and ready. Great. There you go. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Take care.
We're ready.
Wait. Ready? I'm done, right? I just gave my presentation. Did I just do it to nobody?
No, no, no. Yes, we're still live. We're still live on social media, so everyone's still watching. I think you were in the last slide of your presentation
Oh, okay,
when
good.
the call dropped, because I believe when you were sharing the screen to mention
Yeah.
something about Adobe and having a look at that, when you close the screen, it just went over with that. Would you like to do the last slide just so we can wrap it up? We still have maybe a couple of minutes.
Sure, sure, sure. Okay. Um, so just verify with me. So I got through all these, right? And I was,
I can see you stop sharing your screen. If you could just present your
I know.
slides again,
Yep, yep,
and
yep.
that's all good.
So here we go. Share. Okay.
Perfect.
So it was
Now, yeah,
here. It was here where we lost it. I was talking.
correct.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
good. All right. So I'll just continue with this. That's good. I'm glad we didn't lose everything. I was really worried.
No
So
worries.
I was talking about color. I probably closed the browser. What I wanted to mention was that you should limit your palette to 3 colors, so that you don't cause confusion. It also helps you to build a visual hierarchy. Going along with that, use the 60-30-10 rule, which means 60% of the dominant color, 30% for secondary color, and 10% towards an accent color. And so it helps you to create balance and keeps you from creating a chaotic, colorful mess. And so you can see JetBlue is using most of this dark blue. They've got an accent of orange, and then they've got this other blue. They do also use gray kind of as an accent. Background images, sometimes nothing is better than too much. That's causing a lot of confusion, even with the dark screen in the background. Depending upon what you're creating, of course, this is very Swiss. You can leave things just text. So success is when the user must do little to start reaching their goals. And I kind of wrapped it up here with just some statements by John Maeda. He has a book called Simple that is just great. But we all know that keeping things simple is better than overcomplicating things. And hopefully I didn't give you too much information, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that there's 2 parts to this. The one is keeping things simple by doing an information hierarchy that makes sense for your user and keeping all that clutter out with the words and buttons and text that you might need, but also that visual design where you don't start adding gradients and lines and borders and tons of colors to things, because that's also going to add noise. By eliminating noise in both of those places, you make it easier for a user to come in and not be distracted by things that are unnecessary and just reach their goals. So that was all you guys missed. So, phew, I was worried that I shut you down earlier, but that's it. That's the end of the slide deck.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Luckily, we didn't miss much. There you go. Now it's you and I on screen. Actually, we don't have much time, unfortunately. This is live, I've been saying to everyone. So it's one of those things. But I think we do have time to maybe answer one of the questions that I received from one of the groups on Facebook. It says, what kind of research methods do you use?
Okay. So, geez, there's so many. I would say if you are just starting, then go to, it might be a good idea to get a free subscription to Optimal Workshop. Optimalworkshop.com has a whole bunch of tools that can help you. In there, if you're interviewing people, it helps you to put keywords down. It also helps you to do things like card sorting, where you give people a group of items and then have them organize them themselves to help you understand words that they use and such. But in our case, I think the main research technique that we use is just talking to people, coming up with really great conversations and letting them lead the conversation. And then after that would be surveys. But yeah, hopefully that helps.
Okay. I hope that answers your question. If anyone else have any questions, maybe you will be able to meet with Jennifer very briefly in the Oktoberfest area, happening in a couple of hours' times, or you can just leave them in the comments section, and we can always come back to them later on. Thank you so much once again, Jennifer, for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching. And see you in the next session. Take care,
Great.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.